Today we are starting a new chapter, a new topic, namely simplicial complexes. Motivation for the simplicial complex is manifold, several motivations. First of all, simplest maps to understand are linear maps other than constant maps. Calculus was introduced basically to convert so-called differentiable maps into linear maps. The derivative is a linear approximation to a linear function at a given point. A polygonal path approximating a curve gives a lot of information on the curve itself. In fact, all your fonts in computers and everywhere you see, they are made up of line segments. Similarly, even though the main objects of our study in topology are manifolds, we need to prepare ourselves by studying simpler objects with wider scopes first. Manifolds are themselves built up of chunks of Euclidean spaces. But the building up process there and what we are going to do now is quite different. We are also going to build up our objects of study, namely what are called as simplicial complexes, out of closed simplexes, or more generally what are called as convex polyhedrons. So let us understand these objects first in their own way when they are isolated before bringing simplicial complexes. The key word here is the basics of affine geometry. Affine geometry is nothing but the study of simple ideas from linear algebra. Only thing is, the vector space structure has no origin in it. In other words, we have just pretend as if we don't know which point is origin. Conceptually, this is so fundamental, but technically, everything can be transferred to linear algebra by picking up any point as your origin. So that is the advantage. Instead of one fixed origin, you can pretend any other point also as origin and view. So statements which are independent of which point you choose as origin, that belongs to affine geometry. So let us fix up some notation so that again and again we don't have confusion. R power d denotes d-dimensional vector space over the real numbers. The standard base is 1, 0, 0, 0, 1, 0, 0, 0, 0, 1, etc. They are denoted by EI. Every element of RD, we will start denoting them by X0, X1, etc. Okay, up to X d minus 1. Okay. In fact, we will keep including R inside R square, inside R cube, inside R to the 4 and so on, dot, 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 by adding one extra 0. So real numbers is included inside R2 by x comma 0, inside R3 by x comma 0 0, and so on. So this will allow us to study all the R power D simultaneously. The notation is R infinity, which consists of all finite sequences of vectors, like infinite sequences, but eventually zero. After a certain stage, only zeros are there, which is actually, in terms of vector spaces, is a direct sum of infinitely many copies of R. Okay, so that is R infinite. We shall denote by all points x1, x2, x0, x1, x2, xn belonging to Rn plus 1, which satisfy the following property. Namely, they are all non-negative, lie between 0 and 1. The sum total is equal to 1. So sum total is equal to 1 defines a O-dimension 1 subspace inside Rn plus 1. If you just take only this one, this is not a vector subspace, but this is what is called as affine subspace. Okay? So it of dimension n. Inside that, I am taking only those which are non-negative and which lie in all the coordinates lie between 0 and 1. Okay? So this will be denoted by mod delta n. You may wonder why this mod and so on, why not just delta n? Soon we will see all this. Later on, when you get familiar with this, maybe you can just write delta n for this one. And this space is called the standard n simplex. Why this n instead of Rn plus 1? It is very immediate because the dimension of this affine subspace is n. So this is subspace of that, okay, of full dimension. Let us look at the one case, namely, here put n equal to 1. So we are working in R2. So what will be this subspace? x0, x1, summation x1 plus x0 plus x1 is equal to 1. So this will be the line segment joining 1, 0 and 0, 1 inside R2. So it's one dimension, and that will be called one simplex. So one simplex is embedded in R2. Two simplex will be embedded in R3. A two simplex will be the standard two simplex will be the triangle spanned by 1, 0, 0, 0, 1, 0, 0, 0, 1. So those three will be the vertices. Okay, we assume that the reader is familiar with a fair amount of linear algebra, but perhaps not with this affine geometry. That's why we are recalling some of these basic things. Starting with some n points inside Rd, this number of n has nothing to do with dimension d here. Some n points, finitely many points inside Rd. An affine combination means what? It is like a linear combination lambda I xi, where lambda is a real number, but the sum total is equal to 1. So this is like the parameterization of a line segment t times v plus 1 minus t times u. Why t and 1 minus t? Sum total is 1. So that's the whole idea. So that will give you the entire line, but it may not be passing through the origin, right? There is no other condition. Sum total must be equal to 1. So there are only two vectors, okay? x1 and x2 here are not coordinates, they are points. So t times x1 plus 1 minus t times x2 will be the line passing through x1 and x2, right? So that is an affine combination of A1 and A2. Similarly, if you take 3 points, it may give you a plane, may not be. If the 3 points are already collinear, then affine combination will not give you anything more than that line. Okay, the affine combination always makes sense. By affine subspace A of Rd, we mean a subset of Rd with the property that every affine combination of points is inside A again. You take some finitely many points of A, take an affine combination, it must be inside A. So closed under taking affine combination. This is exactly similar to how do you define linear subspaces. Only difference is in the linear combinations of when you take subspace and so on, there is no condition. Lambda is an arbitrary scalars. Here sum total must be 1. That is the difference. Okay. Given a subset M of Rd, by the affine hull of M is meant the collection of all affine combinations of points in M. And this is denoted by Fm. Fm is similar to, given a subset, you can take Lm, which is the linear space spanned by that. It's similar construction. Now I am taking only affine space. Okay, we say that a subset S of Rd is affinely independent. Once again, corresponding thing will be linearly independent in linear algebra. So what is it? Summation lambda xi equal to 0 along with sum total must be equal to 0 here. Okay, watch out for affine combination is different. Affine independence of summation lambda must be 0. Then each lambda I must be 0. If you don't put this condition, what you get is linear independence. All right. So this is the definition of affine independent. This is not cooked up. This is forced upon us. We will see in a moment. Okay. A function A to B between affine subspaces is said to be affine transformation if it satisfies the following affine linearity, namely f of tx plus 1 minus ty is t times fx plus 1 minus t times f. Okay, we are not saying that f of x plus y is equal to fx plus fy. Either we are saying that f of tx equal to t times fx. That will be linearity. So this is affine linearity. Okay, that is the difference. T is any scalar, x and y are subset points of A. A and B are affine subspaces, so that whenever x and y are inside A, t times x plus 1 minus t times y is also inside A for all t. Okay. Suppose you have any singleton set and any 2 set. Okay. Any set or a singleton set is affinely independent. In a linear algebra, 0 is not independent. Any non-zero vector is independent. In affine geometry, such differences are not there. Every point, singleton set, is independent. See? So this is the beauty of affine algebra. It has it's a richer structure than a vector space. Any 2 set, distinct set, it's independent. 0, 1, 0, some vector is not independent. As soon as 0 is there, it's not independent. In the case of linear independence, Okay, so that is the difference. So this is a close relation between, there is a close relation between affine independence and linear independence. Okay, but they should not be confused with each other. The key result is the following lemma, the proof of which is very easy. We will follow it. What is the correspondence between affine independent and linear independent? So this is the lemma. Take a function f from r raised to some power to r raised to some other power. Okay, Rm to Rn or Rr to Rn. Okay, this is an affine transformation. Now I am thinking of R power R as an affine space. Remember, what is an affine space? Affine combination of any two elements should be inside it. That's it. So RR is an affine space also. It is a vector space. It doesn't matter. If you don't know the origin, if you have forgotten it, then it becomes an affine space. It's the point. Okay. So take now affine transformation as not a linear transformation, affine transformation. If and only if you look at the function fx minus f0, that must be a linear transformation. Okay. In a linear transformation, 0 would have gone to 0. F might not have taken because it does not treat any point as distinct. That is the whole business. So now you know what is 0. Look at the image of 0 under f, subtract that, the corresponding function will be linear, and conversely. Okay. So in other words, x going to a times x is a linear map. X going to ax plus some b is a affine linear map. So any degree 1 polynomial defines an affine linear transformation. If the constant is 0, then it is a linear map. All right. So I have given a proof also here. Suppose capital F after subtracting F0 is a linear map. Okay, then go back to the original function f of tx plus 1 minus ty, 1 minus t times y, which is by definition f of tx plus 1 minus t times y plus f0, because capital F of whatever is f of that minus f0, right? So I add f0. Now this is linear is given, right? So it will t times fx plus f0 I can add, 1 minus t times fx plus f0 I can add. So 1 minus t times fx, 1 minus t times fx I have subtracted. But this is nothing but now little fx, little fy. The converse is just, you can reverse the steps here, but you can also do it like this. Assume f is an affine linear transformation. Okay. Then f of 0 by definition is fx minus, right? F of 0 minus f of 0 is f0. This is 0. After that, f of tx by definition f of tx plus 1 minus t0, you can write like this. Okay, minus f0. All right. But when you write like this, it is t times fx plus 1 minus t times f0 minus f0. But that is nothing but t times fx minus f0, which is by definition t times fx. So t comes out of that. Finally, you have to see the addition f of x plus y equal to fx plus fy. Okay. F of x plus y, you can write it as f of twice x plus y by 2, right? When you write like that, this 2 comes out f of x by 2 plus y by 2. But now this is an affine transformation, affine combination. 1 by 2 plus 1 by 2 is equal to 1, right? So that is equal to twice f of x plus y minus f0, which is Now you can expand this one, fx plus fy, okay, 2 will come here, minus twice f0. So fx minus f0 plus fy minus f0, which is capital Fx plus capital F. Therefore, f is linear. Capital F is linear. Little f is affine transformation, so capital. Okay. So here are a few exercises. Okay, affine combination of points of AF is again a point of AF. Okay, show that affine subspace A of RD is a vector space if and only if it is passing through the origin, that's all. Okay, all these exercises are very straightforward. Show that affine subspace A of RD is nothing but translate of a linear space by a vector. So this will follow 3 will follow from 2. Okay, every A can be written as some vector space V plus some vector. If you can choose that vector as 0, then A itself will be a linear space, is the previous thing. Okay. So we define the dimension of an affine subspace to be the dimension of the vector space A minus x, where x is a point inside A. Take a point x inside A and throw it away, and throwing is not throwing away as set. Okay, subtract it from all elements. In particular, A minus x will have 0 in it. So it will become a vector space. Look at the dimension of that. So this is an easy way of defining by using the linear algebra. You can do it without going to linear algebra also. Okay, independently of all these. So here are some other set of exercises. All these exercises should be separately sent to you. You don't have to copy it from here or anything. Okay, I don't want to discuss each one of them now. But before going to the next session, we should be familiar with these things. So don't waste your time on anything. Be firm that you know all these things. Here is one more concept I want to introduce, namely, which you might not have learned in linear algebra. So namely, take a subset of RD. We say this subset is in general position if every K subset of A is affinely independent, where K itself is less than or equal to D plus 1. Every K subset is affinely independent. A itself may be an infinite set. What does it mean, K subset? A K subset means a subset which has K elements. For example, take A as a subset of R3. This will be in general position if no point, no 3 distinct points are collinear, and no 4 points are coplanar. Okay, a single point is always independent. Even a 2 point is always independent. So that won't give you. Starting with 3, there will be 3 points may be collinear. That should not happen, because a K is less than 3 is less than or equal to D plus 1 here. Therefore, every case of affinely independent means they should not be collinear. Similarly, 4 points, if you take any 4 points, they should not lie in the same plane. Okay. So this is what the meaning of general position in R3. So if it's R4, you have to have one more. If Rn, you have to have all the way up to n plus 1. N plus 1 point should be, every n plus 1 point should be affinely independent. Okay, notice that the definition is stronger than saying every D plus 1 subset of A is affine independent. Okay, a D plus 1 subset you take, it may be affinely independent. Okay, so it should be, I am building up this one inductively. You may try to prove that, that's not the point. Every D subset is affine independent. Every D minus 1 subset is affine independent, and so on. Every 2 subset is independent. Every 1 set is independent. Is easy. So that is, all those statements are built up here in one go. That is why this statement is stronger. Whether you just make this one and then arrive at the other one, that's different. Okay. These two conditions are equivalent only if A has at least D plus 1 elements. Okay. So you can check that. So here is a general position theorem which uses a little bit of linear algebra, namely independence of sets is an open condition. In other words, dependency, linear dependency is a closed condition. So it will be thin set. So this is what is involved in this theorem. Okay. That is the theme of the theorem here. Take any n set inside Rd. Given an epsilon positive, there will be points W1, W2, Wn, okay, such that they are very close to, epsilon close to corresponding Vi. The norm of Vi minus Wi is less than epsilon. And of course, if that is the only condition, I could have taken Wi equal to Vi. And these W1, W2, Wn are in general position now. You take 3 points in R3. If they are collinear, what will you do? You will move one of the points slightly away, and then you will become general position. This slightly away can be as small as you please. Epsilon could be any positive number. That is the meaning of this. Okay. Next thing is, part B is, if A is already in general position, then there exists epsilon positive. Here every epsilon, okay, here it exists epsilon positive, such that any set W1, Wn which satisfies this property is already in general position. So general position is very dense, that is a part A, and the second part says general position is a stable property. If you perturb the whole thing slightly, then it will still be in the general position. Okay, so that is the interpretation of these two, A and B here. The proof is, as I told you, it just follows by the dependency of vectors. It's a closed condition. An affine space of D plus 1 into n, okay, in this affine space of dimension is 1, of D plus 1 cross n matrices over R. I am taking D plus 1 rows and n columns. In other words, I am taking Rn, 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 D plus 1 rows. Okay. Look at that. That is a D plus 1 dimension. This is the same thing, linear isomorphic to R D plus 1 times n, right? That those matrices with rank less than D plus 1 is contained in union of finitely many hyperplanes. Okay. Satisfying the first, any d plus 1, you have to write they are linear combinations of something and so on. Okay, so those matrices with rank less than d plus 1. Okay, so therefore the complement of these affines, finite linear affine subspaces is open as well as dense. So it's dense complement means what? For arbitrary small epsilon, you can find points satisfying that. And once we are in the open set, you can find an epsilon such that all small neighborhoods of that will be inside. Epsilon neighborhoods will be inside that open set. So that's the second part. Okay. So I think we will stop here. And next time we will start studying simplicial complexes. Thank you.